The story of Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson's feud over the Beatles' catalog is more than a mere tabloid headline about two wealthy musicians squabbling over assets. It is a profound and deeply personal tale of friendship, business, betrayal, and the very nature of artistic legacy. For McCartney, the man who co-wrote and performed some of the most cherished songs in history, finding himself having to pay to play his own compositions was a bitter pill to swallow, a financial and emotional wound that took decades to heal. Their relationship began not as a rivalry, but as a genuine, if unlikely, friendship. In the early 1980s, McCartney was a living legend, navigating his post-Beatles career with wings, while Jackson was the ascendant king of pop, fresh off the monumental success of Thriller ***. They bonded in the studio while recording the duets The Girl Is Mine for Thriller and Say 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 for McCartney's * Pipes of Peace * album. During this time, they shared more than just vocal harmonies. They shared business advice. It was a very friendly period, McCartney would later recall, the memory tinged with a wistful irony. We'd hang out at my house in Sussex. We'd have dinner, watch movies. He was a lovely, charming, and incredibly talented guy, and we'd talk about business. He was always very curious about how things worked. It was during these conversations that McCartney, perhaps too casually, revealed the mechanics of music publishing. He explained the immense value of owning copyrights, using his own portfolio as an example. He told Jackson about how, in the 1960s, he and John Lennon had lost control of their Northern Songs catalog, a sore point that had festered for years. For McCartney, owning the songs was about securing his legacy and that of the Beatles. For Jackson, the budding mogul, it sounded like the ultimate investment. "I was the one who actually told him about it," McCartney admitted in an interview with David Frost in the 1990s, a statement he would repeat with increasing chagrin. "I said, 'Michael, this is the thing to do.' I was almost giving him a tip. It was a fatal mistake." The opportunity arose in 1984 when the ATV music catalog, which contained the publishing rights to over 200 Beatles songs, as well as a treasure trove of other classics, came up for sale. The owner, Australian tycoon Robert Holmes à Court, was looking for a buyer. McCartney was interested, seeing it as a chance to finally reclaim what he felt was rightfully his. He even reached out to his former bandmate Yoko Ono to propose a joint bid. But the process was slow, and McCartney, perhaps underestimating the competition or hoping for a friendly deal, hesitated. Michael Jackson did not. Flush with the historic earnings from Thriller and armed with the knowledge McCartney himself had provided, he swooped in. In 1985, he stunned the music world by acquiring ATV Music for a staggering $47.5 million, outmaneuvering his friend and mentor. Overnight, the king of pop became the owner of the Beatles songbook. The initial sting was profound. McCartney felt a deep sense of betrayal. This wasn't a faceless corporation, it was his friend, a man he had broken bread with who had taken the very advice meant to help him and used it against him. The personal nature of the acquisition cut deeper than any business loss. In interviews from the time, his hurt is palpable, often masked by a characteristically British stiff upper lip. "I think it's dodgy to do things like that," he said tersely. To be someone's friend, and then to buy the rug they're standing on. For years, the incident cast a long shadow over any mention of Jackson. McCartney's public comments would often mix praise for Jackson's artistry with a pointed reminder of the business deal. It became the defining narrative of their relationship in the public eye, the Beatle who had been outfoxed by the protege. The situation went from a personal betrayal to a professional absurdity. Whenever McCartney wanted to use a Beatles song in a film, a commercial, or even in his own live performances in a specific context, he had to seek permission from, and often pay a fee to, Michael Jackson. The creator was now a tenant in his own creative house. The irony reached its peak when Jackson, in 1988, licensed the song Revolution for a Nike commercial. For McCartney and many Beatles purists, this was sacrilege, using a countercultural anthem to sell sneakers. It was a stark demonstration that the songs were no longer in the hands of those who had imbued them with their meaning. The dynamic shifted again in the 1990s as Jackson's own financial situation became increasingly complex. Needing liquidity, he merged the ATV catalog with Sony in 1995 to form Sony/ATV Music Publishing, a deal that left him with a 50% stake, but not full control. For McCartney, this presented a new, albeit more corporate, reality. The catalog was no longer solely in the hands of his former friend, but shared with a massive electronics and entertainment conglomerate. The battle lines were redrawn, but the fundamental problem remained. Paul McCartney did not own his own life's work. The feud cooled from a boil to a simmer, especially after Jackson's death in 2009. The public narrative began to soften, allowing for a more nuanced reflection. In the years since, McCartney has spoken about the episode with a hard-won sense of perspective, one that acknowledges the pain while also recognizing the broader lessons. In a 2021 interview with *GQ*, he delved deeper into his complex feelings. "It was just business," he began, a phrase he has used often to downplay the emotional toll, but he quickly expanded on this. "I think it's important to distinguish between the person and the action. I loved Michael. I truly did. He was a beautiful guy, and he was incredibly troubled, which makes it all the more sad." This reflection reveals a McCartney who has made peace with the past. He has come to see Jackson's acquisition not purely as a malicious act, but as a symptom of a larger system, the business he so often cites. "In the music industry, there's a long history of artists not owning their work," he noted. "It happened to me and John with Northern Songs. It happened to countless blues and soul legends. Michael was operating within that system. He saw a smart investment, and he took it. Was it a friendly thing to do? No. But was it illegal or, even in the cold light of business, unethical? Not really. It was sharp." This mature perspective is rooted in his own eventual victory. For decades, McCartney quietly and diligently worked to regain control. He built his own publishing company, MPL Communications, acquiring the rights to songs by everyone from Buddy Holly to the entire catalog of Broadway standards. It was a slow, strategic game of chess. The final move came in 2017, when, after years of negotiation, Sony triggered a clause that allowed them to purchase Jackson's estate's share of Sony/ATV. While McCartney didn't buy the catalog himself, the dissolution of Jackson's ownership meant that, for the first time in over 30 years, the Beatles' songs were no longer in the hands of his one-time rival. Then, in a final, poetic twist, a confidential clause in the original ATV sale was revealed. Upon McCartney's death, his copyrights would begin reverting to him. Thanks to the U.S. Copyright Act of 1976, which allows authors to reclaim their works after 56 years, McCartney began the process of legally reclaiming his share of the Beatles' catalog in the 2010s. By 2025, the process is expected to be complete. The rug he felt he was standing on was, by law, being woven back beneath his feet. Today, Paul McCartney's reflection on the feud is less about the sting of betrayal and more about the enduring value of the art itself. The songs, Yesterday, Let It Be, Hey Jude, have long transcended the business dealings that surrounded them. They are global treasures, their value immeasurable in mere dollars. "I've made my peace with it," he stated in the *GQ* interview. "In the end, the music is what matters. Those songs have given me and millions of people so much joy. They outlast any argument, any deal, any feud." The story of McCartney and Jackson's falling out serves as the ultimate cautionary tale for artists. The distinction between creating art and owning it is vast, and friendship is no shield against the allure of a valuable asset. For Paul McCartney, the journey from mentor to rival to a man at peace was a long and winding road, but one that ultimately led him back home, to the music that was always his.